Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Great Tech Group. You're invited to join our conversation to model the future of construction innovation and the digital transformation adventure of this great industry. My guest today is Emily Edelstone. She is a seasoned technical solutions executive at Autodesk with over a decade of experience in the construction industry. Known for her expertise in estimating, planning, and managing complex projects, Emily is a trusted advisor who guides stakeholders towards innovative tech solutions across the project lifecycle. She's also a passionate industry educator, active in the community, and creator of Ed Design Build Ladies, where she shares insights on technology in construction. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Looking forward to it. So I always like to start with how you got into this industry of construction.
Yeah, it's not something where I have family that works in construction or anything like that. A lot of people, have that kind of background. I went to school for civil engineering. I actually had an advisor in high school that told me, hey, you're good at math, you're good at science. They need women in engineering. You should go into that. So I did a summer program in high school, checked it out. I liked building, a bridge out of wood and doing some kind of mock-ups, those kind of things. And I went into civil engineering. And then from there, I got my first internship in construction. Thought it was an engineering internship, but I fell in love with it. I was working on a highway project out on site every day, and the rest is really history. That's why I stuck with the construction industry. Loved it from there.
Yeah. Love it. So then you migrated over to the tech side, and there's been so much change, even in the last decade on construction tech. What do you think is some of the bigger drivers in that really renaissance of technology here in construction?
Technology in general has been changing across every industry, right? So from the general tech world, if you look at 20 years ago, maybe it was 20 years ago, we didn't have something like Facebook, right? And so now we have all those different social media platforms, and every industry technology is changing so much. Now we have AI, and construction is, I'd say, a little bit behind on some of that with adopting technology. And I'm so passionate about trying to spread that adoption and awareness of technology that we do have in construction. There's so much people can be using and leveraging to improve their lives or make it home for dinner at the end of the day, do work safer. Just things are evolving. We're now in 2024, almost 2025, and there's so many new technologies that we have out there, and it's a really exciting space to be in.
Yeah, it's crazy when you put it in perspective as well too. I remember 20 years ago going into college and hearing about this thing called Facebook of like, what is this? And now it's hard to put myself back in that mindset of like, yeah, this is totally mainstream now. I think that totally applies on the construction side as well too. The things that we take for granted now aren't really that old and haven't really been around that long. It's developed really fast.
Yeah, what was life like before we had email or before we had computers to type our papers on? We were handwriting those kind of things, and now the kids in school today are using AI to help them write their papers, right? Like things have just come such a long way, and the construction industry is doing that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Are there certain kind of essential ingredients to really successfully ramp up your tech stack when it comes to all the options for construction?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you're at in your digital transformation journey, right? Are you still doing everything on paper? I had that first project that I worked on, that highway. We would bring in our RFIs on paper to the design team in their office, and I'd have to go check back at the office to see if those came back and if those were responded to. Is that where you're still at, or are you using a decent amount of technology and you're trying to improve from there? I think that makes a big difference as to where you're at and how you're looking at the tech landscape within the industry. For those that may have nothing right now, I definitely like the crawl, walk, run approach. You have to start crawling and you have to start somewhere, but you don't want to be getting in too deep where you're just going to abandon it because it's too much. And I think at the end of the day, your implementation strategy and how you go about your change management is so important. Having a plan for that and how you're going to put that in place is really going to change the game for you on how successful you are with technology. If you can implement the first thing really well and you see a lot of benefit from that, that's only going to help you implement the second thing and then the 10th thing better, right? If you do a bad job implementing that first thing, even if it's something simple, then your next experience and building on that is going to be harder and harder for you.
So would a lack of a strategic plan be really the most common pitfall then of companies not successfully implementing technology?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of people buy technology and I hear it every day from people that are coming to us, "Hey, I need help. I need a solution." But they already have something, right? They're coming to us looking for something similar, but they didn't do a good job adopting whatever it was that they have now. Even if it's, something really simple, they didn't do a good job adopting it. And so now they're still back at square one or they're making their lives a little harder by that. So having a plan in place as to who's going to be the administrators on your account, who's going to be the ones to continually do training. And if you're outsourcing that, what is your plan for that? How often are you going to bring someone in to do refreshers for you? And just looking at that overall landscape when you are buying technology, thinking forward 6 months down the road. So how is this actually going to roll out? So even if you go ahead and you download something like an app on your phone, even, Facebook, for example, right? And you just download it, you may not understand all the tools and all the things with it. But if you start to really learn it and you research it, you're going to get better and better use out of it, right? Then you're going to see more and more improvement from having that technology. You're going to be more willing to take that next step to the technology way as well.
How would you define adopting technology well in construction? What does that really look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it depends on where you're at. Are you looking at just, you know, going from paper to doing a form on paper, and now you're doing a form digitally in something like the Autodesk Construction Cloud, which is primarily what I focus on is the Autodesk Construction Cloud and Autodesk Build. So are you doing something like that, or are you looking at data? So I think from, a basic standpoint, is your team using the technology? What percent of your team is using? Do you have 100 people and only 2 of them are using it, or are 98 people out of 100 using it? I think that's important to look at and something that really helps define it. And then beyond that, if you are further along in your journey, what kind of data and analytics and insights are you getting out of the software and the technology that you are using? And how are you evaluating that? Am I learning that as a general contractor, one of my subcontractors continually has safety issues on my job site? Am I doing something about that? Am I taking that insight from all of my projects and either going and training that subcontractor on how to do something safer, finding a safer way to do it? Or am I no longer contracting with them because I can't work with them in a safe manner, right? So I'd say there's a lot of ways to look at that with how are you adopting and how are you using those tools at your disposal.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I want to kind of double click on that because uh, I think an easy mindset, whether intentionally or not, that people fall into when it comes to technology is, hey, I bought this new piece of software. It's going to solve all my issues and it's just going to kind of automatically happen. The software is going to solve all my problems. How do you kind of fight against that? Because software, the greatest software, you still have to have a plan and process and, everything in place. So how do you fight against that? And then how do you measure truly the efficiency of the team and the software as well, so that you can really roll out that implementation well?
Yeah. I think from the starting point, like whoever is bringing in the technology, you're going to have a champion there, right? And so does that champion then get more champions? Depends maybe on how big your organization is. And so are they the ones that are deciding, okay, we're using this software, this is how we're going to use it, and setting up SOPs for that? So that's something that I did a lot when I was in the field. I was constantly trying to work with the companies that I, was at on how could we improve technology that we were using? How could I go do quality control by myself rather than having another person with me out in the field? Because I could use robotics to do that. I could have something in my, phone or on my iPad instead of having a full blown set of drawings that I was carrying around the job site with me. So I would take all of what I was doing and I would always put it together in some sort of SOP. So I would lay out a plan. This is, really basic step 1, 2, 3, 4 of how we're using this and creating that playbook for the technology so that I have this plan in place and somebody else can use it. They can use it on another job site, or if we're, expanding out to another region, we can use this in the other region as well. Helps with consistency, helps if people have questions to have that champion. If you don't already have a champion, building and finding a champion, someone that's excited about technology is, I think, important, but most likely you probably already have someone. So really coming up with that standard practice, I think, is important.
Yeah, the consistency aspect of it really drives the scalability and repeatability of the workflow there. Are there kind of certain technologies or workflows that you found particularly effective at improving efficiency when it comes to kind of the construction ops side of things?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different things, but if you look at you asked me about metrics, I didn't respond about that. But if you look at something like our auto specs tool, I can run a spec book through this auto specs tool and it can pull out a full submittal registry for me, all of my mock-ups that are required, all my O&M manuals. It can pull that out in a matter of minutes. That's, maybe a 2,000 page spec book. I don't know how long it would take me to read through that and to document all of that in something like Excel. And what kind of quality job am I going to do? Especially that's a task that's going often to the 22-year-old on the job site. In fact, I actually had an internship in college that was my summer project, was to create a submittal registry, right? And that, I was 19 doing that. What did I know really about building and construction to be able to put that together for this project to then go and use? And that's a lot of time, and not only the time, but the quality as well. So that's just a really exciting tool. It's one of my favorite things to look at as to what is the time going into saving here, but not only the time, but what quality job am I going to leverage by having, AI and OCR, machine learning, do some of that work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, another example is ProS, that is one of the, more recent acquisitions of Autodesk. And I can do my takeoff and have that automatically pull from my database and put the pricing together for me, where I used to take that information from my takeoff software, hand write it down, then hand type it into another software, where there's not only a lot of time because I'm doing something 2 or 3 times, but there's a lot of room for human error there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have something do that for me, saving me time, I can put some of that time back into doing the quality control, but then I can go bid more jobs, or I can go manage more subcontractors on the job site because I had this spec book, created for me. I can get more ahead of my punch list. I can find problems before they happen because I'm freeing up this time for my team. So I think it's important to look at just the small things of where am I going to save time? Where can I put that time back into? Or is it, instead of me working a 60-hour week, am I now working maybe a 40-hour week?
Yeah. Love that. So let's address kind of one of the maybe elephants in the room when it comes to change in process and technology. And that's, change is hard and nobody likes to actually change, even if it's for the better and it creates efficiencies in the long run. People still are reluctant to change. So how do you go about approaching that change management effectively in the construction context?
Yeah. I'd say, it comes down to often there is that champion that wants to make some change, right? They're that change maker. They're coming in. I want this, right? And sometimes I see where that champion doesn't put their plan in place and they don't get what they want, right? They get shut down from maybe leadership or from people that aren't as interested in adopting technology. So that champion can put together some things of, here's where I'm going to save. Here's maybe some paper costs that I'm going to save on by not printing, some time that we're going to save. and I'm going to, everyone's going to save 15 minutes a day on this aspect of something that we do within our job. And then I've got 100 people. So that's 150 minutes a day, or actually, no, that's more than that. I don't know how to do math. I'm not an engineer, right? Just kidding. I should be able to do some simple math, but saving a lot of minutes across the organization every day. And what is doing 15 minutes for one person may not seem like a lot, but if you expand that and scale that across an organization, it can be a lot. So
That
just
adds up.
looking at that, and I think it comes down to those people that are wanting the change to have influence. So they're not just going to their leadership or to others that they need to sell this idea on and saying, hey, this is something I want. This is a nice to have, right? We all maybe want a better car. We all maybe want, nicer clothes or this or that. But like, is there a need for that, right? Is me buying a nicer car going to get me anywhere? Maybe it is, right? Maybe I'll save on gas or something like that. So you have to look at all of those different things that come into play with that change and putting that forward. So the ones that do the best within and making the best change that I've seen within their companies, they're really putting the thought into what is this going to do for the business? How is it going to impact the business? And what is my plan? Again, back to implementation. What's the plan for rolling this out for within the company or within a job site?
So a couple things that stood out that are interesting in your answer. You mentioned about having influence and then kind of having those hard numbers of, really the ROI essentially of adopting the different tools. Do you think it all comes back in the end to those hard numbers and that's it? Or is there a balance there between having those hard numbers to convince people of, time saved, money saved, whatever the main metric is there, and also having like some sort of cultural aspect of it too, to bring people in and making them kind of feel the, warm fuzzies of influence, if I can put it that way. Does that make sense?
I think that there's a mix, right? I think that you do have to have some numbers and have to have some backup, but people that are doing it right now, they're looking at what does this mean for my business? And we haven't talked at all about this labor shortage that our industry's been talking about for years that we are facing. And I see it now. I've seen posts on LinkedIn of people asking superintendents to come out of retirement for projects. So there's already this labor shortage that we're seeing in certain areas of the country. They can't hire enough labor right now to do their jobs. And so I think the smart companies are looking at what is this technology doing and being a tech forward company, what does that do to improve morale? What is that doing to attract and retain the young talent? And that's something that I am really passionate about. I think that as Gen Z and then Gen Alpha is not much behind them, they come into this industry, they're going to want to work for companies that are tech forward, that are using the technology. Now, there may be some that are really excited, like myself, about how can I improve technology? And so they may want to have that uphill battle and going into a company where they can see, okay, I can have this leadership role. I can help this company adopt technology. But I'd say most of them where they were, born with an iPhone in hand, they want that technology. They need that technology to exist. And so I think companies should be thinking a lot about that as they're looking at how are we using technology? What is this doing to not only bring in new talent, but also to retain my young talent? Because they are the future of this industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point. I feel like I'm like, when did I become the old person in the room with what I'm about to say? But Gen Z and Alpha are coming in and they're like, what do you mean I can't just do it on my phone? Like what kind of, frankly, backwards setup is this? It should be very streamlined and straightforward, and they don't know what it's like doing it the old hard way and stuff. And so we have to adapt in order to bring them in because they are so tech savvy, and it's just kind of like the baseline expectation of what they are expecting. So what does the future of recruitment for construction really look like with trying to approach this new generation, given the massive, labor shortage and retirements that are happening.
Well, I know that Autodesk had the design and make report that came out and this past year, and in that the number one thing in there was finding and retaining talent. That was the number one, hot item for companies across the design and the construction industry. So it's something that's super important. I personally, every summer, I volunteer with a camp in San Diego. It's the used to be NAWIC's camp, but it's now the Future Construction Leaders Camp for girls. And they have a wait list every year. I believe it's 100 girls that are able to come. They probably have several hundred that sign up for this camp. And they have two different groups. They have a group of apprentices, and they're learning every day about several different trades. So they're maybe doing little plumbing exercises. I actually have here. This year we built these San Diego plumbing, so we learned how to do each.
Yeah, very cool.
To the girls, and then they're learning different trades, and then the girls that have been around for more than 1 year, they're journeymen, and they build some big project every year. So this past year they were building chicken coops, and they have help. They have people like myself that are helping them build. But these are full-blown, chicken coops. They weren't, and they have rooms, they have boxes in them, they have doors, they have electricity, they have everything in them. It's really cool to see, that. So I think that there are organizations like that out there. They do other activities throughout the year to help, influence and bring construction to schools, and idea of this is, really great industry to go into. And so think, there's more and more of that. There's ACE mentorship. There's a lot of things out there that are really popular. And that's helping. Also volunteered this past summer with Autodesk. They had groups that were coming through that were doing an externship. So these were high schoolers or kids that were going just into college. And so they were learning about different aspects of the design and the construction industry. And they were putting together different presentations about different concepts. So I helped some of them out with how they were presenting and what ideas they were presenting. And they had some really cool ideas. So it's exciting to see that younger generation be excited by our industry. And I think it takes all of us to really share like how great of an industry it is. I love to be able to teach the younger generation that there is technology out there. And that's why, I started my Instagram and TikTok to help them learn that there's more than just swinging a hammer. There are jobs in construction where you can almost be playing a video game all day, right? So if you're doing the BIM work and you're doing BIM coordination, you're flying around a model. It's probably similar. I'm not a big gamer, but it's similar to playing games. So I think it's exciting, but there's a lot of work that we need to do. And I think companies play a big role in that, of them thinking forward and adopting that technology, not just for the existing impact that they're getting, the improvements that they're getting now, but for looking at the future and what that future looks like of their companies.
Yeah, more than agree with that. I think there's really a massive disconnect between the reality of the technology landscape that's in construction and the perception of those outside of construction of what construction has to offer. We have to do a better job of really telling the construction story and marketing essentially to the next generation that, hey, there's a lot of cool opportunities here in construction. There's a lot of technology here in construction, and it's not a one path to rule them all. There's so many different opportunities. It's mind-blowing how many different tracks that you could go into construction. You could start by swinging the hammer and end up playing the video game aspect of it and being super heavy in technology and anywhere in between. So I think being able to kind of reinforce that message is awesome. It's needed. There needs to be more people out there. So I love that you started the Instagram and TikTok as well too, to really help.
Yeah. The makeup of the industry has changed so much from when I got into it, right? There were very clear like paths when I joined the industry. Of you go this route or you start in the trades and you go that route. There's people that I know that, started in the trades and now they are bid managers and they went that route because that was something that was exciting to them, or I was a superintendent for a while. And I leveraged a lot of technology with that and I brought ideas to the table. I think, mentorship is important as well. And I think the younger generation has a lot of opportunity for reverse mentorship as well. That's something that I did when I was younger in the industry. I wanted to be in the field. I wanted to learn more about it. And I would go to my superintendents and I would say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to learn about this and teach me, let me follow you, let me shadow you. And in return, I would help them out with some of their technology struggles. So whether it was just making an email or entering something into, software like their daily report, things like that, like I would help them out and help teach them on those aspects. And they would teach me on how to build. And so I think that the younger generation that's coming in has really big opportunity to learn the technology quickly and be always on the forefront of what is out there with technology, and then help teach the older generations about that, and they can learn something from them in return. So the wise and smart individuals that are coming into the industry, they're going to do that, where they're going to seek that mentorship with the reverse mentorship as well.
I'm a huge believer in reverse mentorship because they're almost like mirror images of each other. Now I'm going to, overly generalize here, and there's a danger. So don't get mad at me. But as a whole, the younger generations, obviously more tech savvy, older generations know the tried and true of the practicality side of it. And so I think it's a perfect marriage there of, hey, here's some technology that we can adapt and looking at it from fresh eyes and perspectives back to kind of those baseline expectations of the younger generation of, I can do this in my personal life of making it really speedy and simple and doing it right on my phone. Why can't I do that in construction and helping to kind of push that change? But then you also have the older generations that's like, yeah, but that doesn't work in practice. It might look good, it's a pretty picture, but it's totally going to flop and fall over when you get to the job site, and here's why. And so when you are able to marry both of those skill sets and expertise, you get a much healthier, more well-rounded construction industry. And that's where we really need to go. I see signs of promise and encouragement there that is happening. Maybe not as fast as what some would like, but it is happening. So that's exciting. It just needs to scale that.
It's not always that the older generation like isn't tech savvy or they don't know. Like sometimes it's just that they need to be taught and they need someone that can sit down
For
and
sure.
teach, right? So they can go through, here is what this is actually doing for you. And you can see light bulbs go off in people when they say like, yeah, I can do that out in the field on the job site. I can fill out my daily report rather than having to come back into the office and handwrite it all, then scan it, send it off to someone. So I can do that as I'm making my rounds throughout the day. I can do speech to text on my phone if I don't, like to chat or to type. And I can store all of that so that instead of sitting there and doing my daily report at the end of the day, I can get on the road and I can make it home to my family for dinner. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And I think, when it comes to companies adopting technology, some of the questions you were asking earlier about how, do we make change happen? How is there success? It's holding hands and with those individuals and pairing some of those people up, right? So instead of, pairing a 18-year-old intern with a 22-year-old intern, pair that 18-year-old with a 55-year-old, right? And they're going to learn something from each other, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably more about this, maybe what I was trying to get at earlier. It's more about looking at it with fresh eyes and being open to that fresh perspective of both ways of seeing something different and being open to that more than anything else. I think that's what is really going to help drive the change in the technology that we want is having that kind of open mindset of, okay, here's a different way to look at it. And that's what's cool about bringing in, people with different types of backgrounds into construction industry, because we all look at it. We all come from different vantage points. And when you are able to all get in the room and kind of see that, wide variety of perspectives, the only outcome of that is to improving and get better from it because you're able to see all the different angles and holes.
And the businesses that are open-minded to everything, like, they're gonna be the ones that are most successful at the end of the day, right? Because they are implementing technology. They are bringing in different opinions into the room, right? So we're not just doing everything because that's the way that we've done it for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at, oh, maybe that is a better way to do it. And yes, we've done this for 30 years and that worked well. But this new idea, it doesn't even have to be technology, right? It could be the way that we are swinging a hammer or doing something safer. Like, this is going to be safer for us, or this is going to be faster for us. So yeah, let's evaluate that. So the ones that are open, I think that they're going to really take off and be ahead of the others at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
for sure. Well, bringing it back to the technology side as we start wrapping up here, what on the technology side do you see as being some big trend lines to watch out for that are going to help advance the industry over the next couple of years?
I think AI is the one that everyone is talking about. You've probably had that on a lot of your podcasts. It's something that we hear about a lot. That's something that really disrupted, I think, all of our lives a few years ago when AI really started coming out and being something that we were talking about. AI was used before, but when ChatGPT came out, it was something that we all had access to and we all started using. You can use it for more than just, work and things like that. I use it when I'm cooking to help me with recipes. If I need to double a recipe or cut a recipe in half, there's so many things that I use, like something like ChatGPT for. So I think AI is obviously the forefront. It's what everyone is talking about. It's a lot of what we talked about at Autodesk University this fall was AI. It's top of mind for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, a couple of rapid fire questions for you. What is the
Yeah.
phrase modeling the future? What does that kind of mean and bring up in your mind?
I think two things. I mean, you can think about that as we're talking about the design and construction industry, right? So like doing a physical model, a BIM model, things like that. And in my eyes, I think it's being like a model citizen, right? But within your own company, or within your industry. So how am I using technology? How am I treating other people? How am I bringing my A game to my meetings? So I think there's, a few ways that you can look at that question.
Yeah, I like it. What does innovation mean to you?
I think innovation means like really pushing beyond that gap, right? So not just doing things because it's the way that we've done it, but how can I do something better? Again, maybe that's using ChatGPT in your workflow to help you write an email, but it could be beyond that using, full blown technology. But it's really, how am I always improving on what I'm doing and bettering myself? Because what I did yesterday, there's probably a way that I can do it better tomorrow.
I like it. How do people find out more information and connect with you?
So ways to connect with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's through my name, Emily Edelstone, and on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I don't use Twitter and X as much, or X and Threads as much, but I am on them at Design Build Ladies.
Awesome. Well, final question for you. If I could give you all construction power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing, what would you pick to innovate?
I love the concrete industry and building structures. So it would probably be something around that, how we can do that faster, better, and cleaner. Not as clean of an industry as we think, even though a lot of the materials are recycled. There's a lot of shipping and freight that goes along with that makes them dirtier materials. So probably would be something with concrete.
Yeah, I like it. Very cool. Well, Emily, thanks so much for taking the time and joining the show and having a very wide ranging conversation. I love it. That was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Todd, for having me.